In this video, we're going to look at problem C on page 52. So it's asking us to use our Pythagorean identities to simplify sine times cosine divided by 1 minus sine squared. Remember that when it's asking us to simplify, it's just asking us to get as few terms as possible, and we probably don't have any fractions. So let's look at the Pythagorean identities. The Pythagorean identities are on page 51, right here. And it's asking us to use our Pythagorean identities to simplify our problem. So at the moment, we have sine times cosine divided by 1 minus sine squared. Nothing really simplifies. So let's see if we can change something to make stuff simplify out. So notice that in the denominator, we have 1 minus sine squared. This should look familiar. We've seen it in problem A. Remember that in problem A, we changed 1 minus sine squared to cosine squared, because looking at this equation, identity, sine squared plus cosine squared equal to 1, we can rearrange it so that it becomes 1 minus sine squared. Remember, to do that, we subtracted sine to both sides of the equation, so we got 1 minus sine squared. So let's go ahead and do that again. So subtract sine squared to both sides. Minus sine squared. Sine squared minus sine squared is 0, so it cancels out. Bring down our cosine squared. And we have cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. So just like we saw in problem A, we can replace 1 minus sine squared with with cosine squared, because 1 minus sine squared equals cosine squared. So let's go ahead and rewrite our problem. So what we actually have then is sine times cosine on the top, or the numerator of our fraction, divided by 1 minus sine squared, which is the same thing as cosine squared. Oops, I just realized the variable's an a. Just an angle, so it's the same thing. Okay, so now we have sine times cosine divided by cosine squared. Remember that cosine squared is just the same thing as cosine times cosine. So we can rewrite our problem again as sine times cosine divided by cosine times cosine, since cosine squared is cosine times cosine. Okay, does anything else out? So we have cosine on the top, cosine on the bottom. Cosine divided by cosine is just 1, since any number divided by itself is 1. And then we're left with sine divided by cosine. Okay. Now, can we simplify this anymore? Because right now we have two terms, sine and cosine. Well, remember what sine over cosine is. Sine over cosine, as we've seen quite a bit now, is actually the same thing as tangent. So if we want to simplify our number as much as possible, we can just replace sine over cosine with one term, tangent, since sine divided by cosine is equal to tangent. And now our answer is simplify it as much as possible. We don't have any fractions, and we only have one term, tangent. Okay, perfect. So that's problem C. In the next video, I'll go over problem D on page 52. Until then, see ya.